I'm Danny Dorling. I'm the Halford Mackinder Professor of Geography at the University of Oxford.
Okay. And I'm Shona Gault. I'm current president of Oxford First Gen, and I'm also a current Oxplore intern, and I'm studying English and Italian at Keble College, Oxford. So our first question today is, what is income inequality?
Income inequality is the difference between the amount of money different families in the UK get in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at the total amount that the family gets a year, you take away taxes, you take away how much it costs for them to pay for the rent or their mortgage on a house, and that's their disposable income, and you compare that to the income of another family and you get a difference. The bigger that difference, the bigger the inequality. In the UK we have the biggest income inequality in the whole of Europe, so it's very, very big.
So, and Danny, how do you think the attitudes of rich people towards wealth as a concept affect equality in the UK?
Well, rich people vary. Most rich people don't realise they're rich because, I don't know, they might be in a house worth £500,000 and they know other people who are in a house worth £1 million. And people who are in a house worth £1 million know other people who it's worth £2 million. So when you actually ask people, are you rich? Almost everybody says, no, I'm average. But people who've got money, who've got security, often look down on others who don't have it. And they think that other people haven't worked hard enough, haven't been thrifty enough, haven't been careful enough, or aren't clever enough. So people almost always think that they deserve what they've got. And people who've got a lot, who've got a huge amount, think that there's something really special about them, and that's why they deserve to have so much.
Right. Do you think that these attitudes are changing at all? And if so, do you think they're changing enough?
They're beginning to change. So throughout the 1980s and 1990s and noughties, things got worse and worse. Our attitudes got more arrogant, it got nastier. As the gap between rich and poor widened, the rich looked down with even nastier attitudes on the poor. It's kind of reached a peak a couple of years ago, partly because of the financial crash of 2008. Nobody now thinks that bankers are wonderful people who make wealth out of nowhere, but we used to think that. We used to think they were great and they made everybody better. You're also getting cases now in the United States of the grandchildren of very rich people, Abigail Disney, writing letters to the mayor of New York saying, please can you increase taxes on us because we don't need this money and I'd like to live in a nicer city.
And what would you say is the relationship between income equality and luck?
Oh, okay. Luck's incredibly important. People often underestimate the effects of luck. So when you think about what's happened to you in your life, if you think about, well, who you were born to was luck. You didn't decide who your parents were, but who your parents were has a huge effect on who you are, what possessions you have, what kind of school you might have gone to, and that's all luck. But then there's loads of other little bits of luck, whether you become ill at various points or don't, whether you're hit by a car or not, that's largely luck. How you do in exams. It's amazing how much we think or we're taught that your exam grade actually reflects your ability. Whereas honestly, if you were to take an exam again and again and again and send it in, you'll find you'll get different marks. Partly because there's a bit of randomness over marking, partly because there's randomness over your performance. And you know, if you're going out with somebody and they split up from you the week before your exams and you really like them, bad luck, which will have an effect on your life. Luck plays the probably most important role in what happens to people. So when we look at people who've made a lot of money, they are almost always hardworking, but more than that, they're almost always lucky. And for everybody who's hardworking and tries to make a lot of money, most people fail. And the ones who succeed aren't the ones who are just a little bit better at being entrepreneur or a bit greedier, although they often are greedier. They just had lucky breaks. And when they get old, they eventually realise it. But sadly, in middle age, people don't realise how important luck was and they think it was them, particularly men. Men are really good at thinking that they're special. And it makes them feel good. It just isn't true.
So Danny, do you think that we should pay everyone the same?
No, but we should have much more narrow differences than differences we currently have. So if somebody works 16 hours a day, they should be paid twice as much as somebody working 8 hours a day. But you can't work any more than 16 hours a day, you'll die. If somebody's twice as good, they should be paid twice as much as somebody who's half as good as their job. But nobody should be employed who's so bad that they're more than half as bad, if you see. So I can justify 2-to-1 ratios on performance. And lastly, if a job is really dangerous and horrible, deep sea diving oil wells is always given, then you should pay people more to do a dangerous and dirty and horrible job. But again, no job should be so horrible that you have to pay them more than 2 times. And if you do that, if you have 2, 2, 2, and you multiply them together, you get a maximum difference of 8 to 1. So I can justify at the very extreme, some people have been paid 8 times more than others, but the vast majority should be paid very similar amounts. And this is what happens in Germany, and Japan, and the Netherlands, and Sweden, and Finland, and Norway. About a third of the countries of the affluent world, already most people are paid very similar amounts. They're happier, they live longer, they're healthier, their children do better at school, they're better housed, the transport systems work better, their countries are more productive, they're more imaginative, they create more inventions. You can go on and on. I mean, it really is so obvious. If you look at the most unequal countries, the USA, Russia, the UK, Israel, are all in a terrible mess.